Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive into modern Indian history. We're tailoring this especially for you UPSC aspirants out there working hard for the GS1 paper. But of course, anyone who loves this fascinating period is welcome to join us.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to delve into this rich history.
So today we're tackling a topic that's, well, it's kind of surprising when you think about it. Imagine explaining India's tech scene today without mentioning the British Raj.
Right. You practically can't.
It's almost impossible. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. How did a colonial power end up laying the foundation for modern technical education in India?
It's one of those historical paradoxes. Really makes you think. The British, driven by their own needs, set something in motion that would actually help shape India's independent development.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly altruism, was it? But before we go further, maybe we should clarify what we mean by the Raj for our listeners who might be new to this.
Good point. The Raj, short for British Raj, refers to British rule in India, which lasted from 1757 to 1947. And you have to remember, the British had a massive job on their hands, governing a huge, complex subcontinent like India.
Right, not a simple task.
Plus, they had their own economic goals.
Okay.
They wanted to exploit resources and make India a market for their goods.
So that's what we mean by that colonial agenda everyone talks about, the need for control and resources. And to achieve that, they needed skilled manpower, not just Brits sent over from England.
Exactly. They needed Indians trained in engineering, administration, and various technical skills. Just think about all the construction during the Raj. Railways stretching across the country, irrigation canals, bridges, the list goes on.
Yeah.
All of that required trained people.
Okay, so it wasn't just about building schools for the sake of it. They had a very specific purpose in mind. So where did they begin? I was doing some research and came across these names that are legendary in Indian education. Rookie, Shibpur. These weren't exactly small-time schools, were they?
Not at all. These were the early giants, you could say. Roorkee College, which we now know as IIT Roorkee, was founded way back in 1847 near the Ganges Canal. And the Ganges Canal was a huge infrastructure project. They needed engineers who knew the local conditions, the terrain, the specific challenges of a project like that.
Wow, 1847, that's going way back.
Then you have Bengal Engineering College in Shibpur, founded in 1856. Calcutta back then was a major center for shipbuilding and industry. So again, location, location, location.
So strategic. But setting up these institutions back then, I can't imagine it was easy. What kind of hurdles did they face?
Oh, tons. First, there's always the money issue. Securing funding, especially in those early years, was a constant battle. Then there's the question of finding qualified faculty. Technical education in India was still so new. Where do you find professors who are experts in these emerging fields?
That's a great point.
And then you had to convince Indian students to actually embrace this new type of education. That wasn't a walk in the park either.
That makes me think about the students themselves. They were really stepping into uncharted territory, going against the traditional ways of learning. What was the curriculum like in these early colleges?
In the beginning, it was heavily based on British institutions. That makes sense, right? But as these institutions developed, they had to adapt. The curriculum started to incorporate local needs, Indian knowledge systems. You see new courses popping up, like specific surveying techniques for the Indian terrain, irrigation methods suited to the climate, even architectural styles that blend British and Indian elements.
Fascinating.
It's really fascinating to see how it evolved over time.
So it wasn't just a copy-paste from Britain. It was a dynamic process, responding to the realities on the ground. I think that's a really crucial point for our UPSC listeners. History isn't static. It's alive. It's constantly changing.
Couldn't agree more. And this ability to adapt is a major reason why these institutions survived and thrived even after independence. They had built a foundation that could grow and evolve with the times.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we've talked about these big engineering colleges, but what about the folks who didn't need a full engineering degree? What about the need for skilled artisans, craftsmen?
That's where things get even more interesting. The British also set up a whole network of technical schools across India.
Oh, I see.
These weren't focused on high-level engineering. They taught practical skills for specific trades: carpentry, metalworking, surveying, drafting. It's a good reminder that technical education isn't just about fancy degrees. It's about giving people the skills they need to actually contribute to the economy.
Absolutely. That's a really important point.
It was all about equipping people for the workforce.
Yeah. We often focus on those big names, but this grassroots level training was vital. And I'm guessing location played a key role here as well, right? These schools weren't just randomly placed.
You got it. Take the Mayo School of Art In Lahore, for example, established in 1875, it wasn't just about fine arts. They trained artisans in skills that were in high demand in the Punjab region: carpet weaving, metalwork, wood carving, skills that directly fed into local industries. And the export market, of course.
Wow, so it's almost like a precursor to today's vocational training initiatives, right? You learn a specific skill and you're directly employable,
Mm.
contributing to the economy. And this was happening back in the 1870s.
Exactly. The principle's the same, right?
Mhm.
Provide practical skills that meet real-world needs. It was driven by a very pragmatic approach, maybe even a little self-serving, you could say.
So we've got this two-pronged system emerging. Colleges for high-level engineering and technical schools for specific trades, all strategically placed to serve the Rajah's needs. But something tells me there's more to the story. Something had to shift, right?
You're absolutely on the right track. The early 20th century brought a major turning point: the formation of the Indian Industrial Commission in 1916.
Ah, yes. The Indian Industrial Commission. Now things are getting really interesting. This feels like it goes beyond just training Indians to serve the Raj.
It was a real turning point. The commission wasn't just about maintaining things as they were, it was about recognizing that India needed to play a bigger role in its own industrial development. Indians needed to be more involved.
Okay, so what kind of concrete actions did the commission take? What changes did they implement?
Well, one of their big focuses was expanding access to education. They introduced scholarships and grants, particularly for those interested in technical fields. They also started facilitating opportunities for Indian students to study abroad.
Wow, so they could bring back new knowledge and expertise to apply back home.
Exactly. This was a huge step in fostering a whole new generation of Indian leaders and innovators.
Okay, so this is a real shift then. From just training workers to cultivating leaders, it's not just about maintaining the Raj, it's about planting seeds for something bigger.
Precisely. And this shift in perspective is crucial for understanding how India went from being a colonized nation to a self-reliant, independent powerhouse. You could say the seeds were sown right there within the system the British had created.
Mind-blowing stuff.
Yes.
We've gone from building railways for the empire to nurturing the minds that would one day lead a free India. It really speaks to the power of education and the resilience of the human spirit.
I couldn't put it better myself. You know, it's really interesting when you think about how, even within the system the British created, there were already seeds of change being planted.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
Well, just look back at the Indian Industrial Commission. They pushed for greater Indian participation in technical fields. It wasn't just about filling slots in the existing order.
Right.
It was about creating a whole generation of Indian thinkers, innovators, leaders.
Right, like they were unintentionally nurturing a mindset that would eventually challenge the system they were part of.
Exactly. As more Indians gained access to this education, they started to envision an India where technology wasn't just a tool for colonial administration, but a force for national development. A real shift in perspective was happening.
So even before independence, we're seeing this idea of a self-reliant India taking root.
Precisely. Imagine you're an Indian engineer back then. You're designing bridges, irrigation systems, maybe even working on the railways. You see the power of technology firsthand. It's only natural to start thinking, how can we use this to build our own nation?
That's a powerful image. And it leads us right into the post-independence era. The British leave, and India is left with this legacy of technical education. What happens next? How did the newly independent government approach this inheritance?
Well, they faced a pretty monumental task, right? Rebuilding a nation, forging a new identity, charting a new course, and technical education was seen as absolutely essential to all of that.
That makes sense. You need skilled engineers, scientists, technicians to build a modern nation. So did they just pick up where the British left off, or did they take a different approach?
It was a little of both, actually. They definitely built on what the British had established, but they also adapted it to fit India's own unique needs and aspirations.
Right.
The goal was to create something distinctly Indian, something that responded to the specific challenges and opportunities India faced.
We're talking about a massive undertaking here.
Yeah.
Were there any particular initiatives or institutions that really stood out during this period? Aside from the obvious ones, like the IITs, I mean.
Oh, there are many. But the IITs are a great example of this blend of continuity and change. The first one, IoT Kharagpur, was established in 1951.
Okay.
And the vision was clear: create centers of excellence in engineering and technology that could rival the best in the world.
Aiming high from the start. But was the model entirely based on Western institutions, or did they incorporate any uniquely Indian elements?
They definitely drew inspiration from well-known institutions abroad, but they also recognized the need to adapt to the Indian context. For example, they brought in elements of traditional Indian craftsmanship and design into some of the engineering programs. It was about finding a balance between global standards and local relevance.
That's fascinating. So it wasn't about blindly replicating the West. It was about forging a new path.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just limited to engineering, right? What about other technical
It's
fields?
absolutely. India invested a lot in agricultural research, developing new crop varieties and farming techniques to boost food production. They made significant strides in medical sciences, setting up new medical colleges and research institutions. And of course, there was the whole field of space exploration, which really captured the nation's imagination.
So it was a multi-pronged approach, driven by this yearning for self-reliance. It wasn't just about catching up. It was about becoming a leader in its own right.
Exactly. And this push for self-reliance was woven into the very fabric of India's post-independence development strategy. Technical education was seen as the key to overcoming the nation's challenges and building a brighter future for its people.
It's a truly inspiring story. A nation taking control of its own destiny, using education as a tool for progress. But I'm sure there were challenges along the way. Building a new nation is never easy.
Oh, of course there were hurdles. Resource constraints were a big one.
Right.
Just imagine trying to expand education opportunities for millions while also building infrastructure, industries, everything a new nation needs. And then there was the challenge of building a system that could cater to such a vast and diverse population, bridging the gap between rural and urban needs.
And I imagine some people question this heavy emphasis on technical education. Perhaps they felt it was neglecting other important areas like the humanities or the arts.
There were definitely debates about priorities and how to allocate resources, but overall there was a consensus that technical education was crucial at that moment. It was seen as the engine of economic growth and a pathway to self-reliance.
So it was about making strategic choices, understanding the needs of a newly independent nation. And despite the challenges, they managed to not only maintain, but expand upon the technical infrastructure they inherited.
It's a real testament to the vision of the leaders, the hard work of so many individuals, and that unwavering belief in the power of education to transform a nation.
It's a story full of twists and turns, complexities, triumphs. It's history coming alive, showing us how a nation grappled with its past to create its future.
And there's still so much more to uncover.
There is. We've traveled from colonial times to the birth of a new era, but the story doesn't end there. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the evolution of technical education in India. We've come a long way from those colonial roots through that incredible push for self-reliance after independence, and now it's time to tackle the present.
And the present, as always, is full of complexities. We've seen how India built this amazing system, but each era brings its own unique challenges and opportunities, right?
So let's talk challenges. What are some of the things that are keeping educators and policymakers up at night when it comes to technical education in India today?
Well, one of the biggest, without a doubt, is just the sheer scale of the demand. India has a young and rapidly growing population, and everyone wants good quality education. It's a real challenge.
Millions of young people competing for limited spots in the top institutions.
Exactly. And it's not just about building more schools and colleges, it's about ensuring that those institutions are providing education that's relevant and up to date. The world's changing so fast, driven by technology and globalization. Technical education needs to keep pace. It has to constantly evolve to meet the needs of the modern workforce.
Okay, so how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
What are some specific areas where India's technical education system needs to adapt and evolve?
Curriculum development is a huge one. Don't get me wrong, traditional engineering disciplines are still important, but we need to think about creating more interdisciplinary programs, ones that give students a broader range of skills.
You mean programs that combine, say, engineering with data science or biotechnology with computer science?
Exactly. Those lines are getting blurred. The workforce of the future needs to be adaptable, creative, able to think across disciplines. Another really crucial area is making that connection between academia and industry stronger.
Yeah.
There's often a disconnect between what's taught in the classroom and what's actually needed in a real job.
That's a complaint you hear all the time, right? I spent years learning theory, but nobody taught me how to use it.
Right. We need more internships, apprenticeships, collaborative research projects, anything that can bridge that gap and give students practical experience.
So moving beyond rote learning, creating a more hands-on experiential environment, But let's face it, implementing reforms in a system as gigantic as India's is no walk in the park. What are some of the roadblocks we need to overcome?
Bureaucracy. It's a big one. Change can be slow, especially in large systems. There can be a lot of resistance to new ideas. We need leaders who aren't afraid to challenge the way things have always been done and embrace new approaches.
It's about breaking out of that "we've always done it this way"
Yeah.
mindset. And of course, there's the ever-present issue of funding. These kinds of reforms require investment.
Absolutely. India has to make funding for technical education a priority, both at the national and state levels. And it's not just about buildings, it's about investing in faculty development, in research, in creating a whole ecosystem that supports innovation.
It's about creating an environment where both students and educators can thrive and push the boundaries of knowledge.
Yes. And that investment will pay off. A highly skilled and innovative workforce is essential for economic growth, for social progress, for global competitiveness.
So it sounds like while there are definitely challenges, there's also an incredible sense of opportunity. India has this amazing history of ingenuity and a young population that's eager to shape the future.
Absolutely. With the right policies, the right investments, and a commitment to excellence, India's technical education system can be a real force in shaping a brighter future, not just for India, but for the whole world.
Wow, what a journey this has been. We've explored how a colonial project, meant for something else entirely, laid the groundwork for a nation's rise in technology. We've seen how India took control of its own educational destiny and blazed its own trail. And we've glimpsed into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
It's been an amazing exploration, full of twists and turns and insights.
And for those of you out there preparing for the UPSC exams, I hope you found some valuable takeaways. This isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the forces that have shaped modern India, seeing how the past, present, and future are all connected.
I couldn't agree more. Understanding history is essential for building the future.
And on that note, we want to leave you with a final thought. As we've seen, technical education has played a massive role in India's journey. But the story's not over. The future is being written right now. So we ask you, what role will you play in shaping the future of technical education in India? What will your contribution be?
Something to think about. We all have a part to play.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new, gained a new perspective, and maybe even feel inspired to look at the world a little differently. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know what you think in the comments. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep aiming high.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those questions.